it's just this one strand. Hello, internet. This one strand of hair will not get with the program and move to the side. Everybody else, you can see, everybody else is on the train.
Yep.
This guy is a problem. And it's just long enough to touch my eyelashes.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Love that.
No, that's when I grab barrettes. Just pin it all down.
I don't own any. I've had such short hair that I had no need for any sort of hair implement in the last decade. And now I'm growing out the top and I'm like, I don't own a hairbrush. I don't own any barrettes or hair ties. Like literally nothing.
Starting from scratch. Well, if you have a pair of scissors, you could just go snip and be done with it for now.
I could, but I'm trying to grow it out. So I don't want to cut any random pieces short.
I don't know that it would show for very long. I need to actually cut all this short again because I'm getting trapezoid hair. When it gets clean, it all sticks out like this, and I hate it. But I like having a bob, at least for now. And I miss red. Blue did not stay, and it's dull and dishwatery, and I want my red back.
So on camera, it looks like silvery blue right now, and it actually looks really cool. So I completely understand because my blue is, you can't even tell that it's in there right now.
Nope.
Like on camera, you cannot see. But
it looks nice on camera, but in person, it just looks like,
like a little bit moldy. Yeah, mine's doing that too. And I tried to put some lavender over it, but it washed right out because it was just too pale. And my hairstylist today was like, so are you going to dye your hair for Pride? And I was like, yeah, probably. I'm thinking about it. And I thought maybe purple. And she was like, purple would be good. It would cover this up. And I was like, oh, that bad, huh?
Did you see Bernadette Banner's post that it's not just Pride Month, it's also Scoliosis Awareness Month, because apparently June is a great time to celebrate things that aren't straight.
Yes. So I have a personal fan theory that Bernadette Banner and Kathy Hay are a couple.
I could see that.
They're so close and they're so affectionate. And I'm like, I also had to tell Sandy that Abby Cox and Nicole Rudolph aren't married.
Damn it.
They're both married to men.
Oh. Beards?
Possibly. I mean, they live next door to each other. Maybe it's a polycule. I don't know. But just because I said something about them being married to men, and Sandy was like, what? But in that video we watched where they were together, they were definitely men. I was like, I know.
I opened up a can of worms on the internet today. Totally didn't mean to. It was quite amusing because I was, avoiding working. So I went on Facebook and said, I didn't like it that Steve Rogers went back in time and ended up with Peggy. I didn't like it. It didn't sit right with me. Here are the reasons why. Holy shit. Like 200 comments, 500 likes, dislikes, whatever, all of the things. Like people feel very strongly on this topic.
I wasn't aware that it was controversial. I thought everyone thought that was hot trash.
No, it's controversial. And there were plenty of really good arguments in favor of it as a good way to round up his story. A whole lot of, look, he's been a hero his whole life. They should have been together, but the war stopped them. Time travel wasn't a natural part of their thing. Like a whole lot of, and the husband that she refused to name in that old interview, that was totally him. And of course he had to go back but then not get involved because he's retired now and he doesn't want to mess up the timeline anymore. Like really intelligent things that made me go, okay, I'll buy it. And then there were one or two that were like, you stupid bitch, why do you even think that way? I hate you. And it was like, you realize that smart people are making your argument, right? You didn't have to do that.
I mean,
and then half of them are, yeah, that really bothered me. Like, I totally agree with you. Thank you for saying it. So it's like, that seems to be pretty even split. Hilariously. Just like everything else.
Well, I think it was hot trash.
Hot trash. Yeah.
It was a giant case of the not gays. Where
That
they were
too.
like, the only thing that makes sense with this character is we have established his arc and motivations would be for him to be gay. Let's immediately no homo him as hard as we can by yeeting him back 50 years in the past.
Hashtag no homo. Right. And there were a few that were even more vociferous about it than me. Like, how dare they treat Peggy, my favorite character, like some kind of fucking trophy that he won? Bastards. And there was one that was like, to make your point, Cap's arc, first movie, save Bucky at all costs. Second movie, find Bucky. Third movie, save Bucky at all costs. Fourth movie, screw Bucky. I'm going I'm gonna go live with this girl that I didn't even have a single date with.
I'm just saying. Also, if someone that you never actually got to the point of having a date with, like, goes to extreme measures to show up at your door, and it's not time travel, it's just Tinder, it's considered creepy. So I'm just putting that out there.
Right. I also didn't argue much further than just kind of apparently casting the fox among the chickens, but there was one person who was like, but they were in love. They both kept a picture of the other one for all those years. And I was like, yeah, a picture. You can't fall in love with a picture.
No. Also, you never have to ask a picture why it didn't do the goddamn dishes again.
Yeah. Yeah, there's people accusing me of not believing in true love. I'm like, I'm with my true love. And if I told him I'd given up my entire life, future ability to affect events in order to be with him, he would put me in therapy.
Yeah, that's also not like a very even trade for a relationship. Like, I'm going to give up everything and like, yeah, ability to affect events.
There are those, so there's the people going, Steve wouldn't have let 9/11 happen, and other people going, hold on, what if a lot worse things would have happened and he was affecting events and just minimizing the damage? So people do think about these things, and it was a good way to while away time where I was terrified of painting and didn't want to sit still. Actually, it was probably a terrible way to do that, but I enjoyed myself enormously.
Look, if you enjoyed yourself, it can't be that bad.
I really did. There were two women who leaped to the defense of like decency when one person started calling me hang on, I can never remember, a dirty casual.
What does that mean?
Oh, well, it means she's a fucking gatekeeper, and she doesn't believe that if you don't live and breathe the MCU, then you don't get to talk about it ever.
But
dirty casual called me that twice.
I'm sorry, I know that's probably terrible, but I just think that's hilarious that that's supposed to be an insult.
It was so fucking funny. And I mean, I'm the one who does fan art mermaids of MCU characters. So it was not just like hilarious, it was also incredibly inapposite. And I was like, I didn't have to say a thing. A couple of ladies were like, who the fuck are you?
Nice. Also, excellent use of the word inapposite. People don't use that anymore.
Yes, well, I mean, we've got to keep the good words alive because apparently dirty casual. Doesn't it sound like a Ralph Lauren fashion movement?
Sounds like the cover or the title of my next album. Like, also, definitely my style on like laundry day.
It was really hard for me to show that painting. Oh well, it's not a finished painting anyway. Yes. I still have a bunch of postcards that I never got around to selling, so I sent them to the two ladies. Like, not because they defended me, but because they just defended decency online, which is thin and few and far between. Thin on the ground.
Thin in the air, just generally pretty trim.
Generally pretty trim. It was a fun day all around. Anyway, I'm showing the interwebs. The owl that I worked on last week is finished. He's got a derpy side. Brr. And he's got a less derpy side.
The other side is like, it's just that one pupil.
Yeah, it's kind of drifted. It drifted, but then so did his beak. Got globbed, and his eyebrows kind of raised, and it's just... That was the side I worked on before I had the black beeswax, so I couldn't really tell where I was laying down my lines.
Ah.
Why won't it focus?
It's focused as far as I can tell.
Oh, good. Anyway, I thought it turned out pretty cute. Look at his little feet.
I like the feet.
I like the feet.
I will be working on this today. I have two leaves.
Beautiful. Oh my god, we are probably a lot farther than this.
Yeah. By the way, just in case you needed to feel the sudden breath of passage of time on the back of your neck, Felix can count to 10 and do most of the alphabet on his own.
Oh god. Oh, these things. Yeah. Anywho, I started reading the Lord of the Rings to Abby, like a month ago?
Mm-hmm.
We're already in Lothlorien. So we don't stop and chat about it as much as you and I do.
I was going to say, it must be nice. You're going to finish with him before.
There's going to come a day when I'm reading the same passage on one of these Mondays. Although we do stop and talk about some things. And I printed out black and white copy of the map, really big, and he hung it on his wall. And did I tell you this last week?
Mm-mm.
He's marking in pencil where the Fellowship has got to. Every time we read.
Cool.
Yeah.
He's going to need some colored pencils so he can do 2 different lines here in a little bit.
That's what I'm thinking. But it was neat that I could be like, they looked out from the trees of Karen Amroth and they saw something dark in the distance, and I could be like, Abby, what did they see? And he goes to the map and Mirkwood? Yes.
That's adorable.
He's learning map reading at the same time.
It's like geography, but cool.
Yep.
All right. Can you see the... Oh, there we go. I was like, I can't see the stitches. Oh, right, because it's on the wrong part of the fabric.
Have we described? No, we have not described Shelob yet.
No, it was right at the end where it was talking about that she had many ways out of her lair.
Got it. Oh, my poor little mic is going to bother me because apparently it has like a rhoda or something, because it's not echoing right now. But every so often it gets to where it's like, oh, you mean you wanted to hear yourself twice, right? There age long she had dwelt, an evil thing in spider form, even such as once of old had lived in the land of the elves in the west that is now under the sea, such as Beren fought in the mountains of terror in Doriath, and so came to Luthien upon the green sward amid the hemlocks in the moonlight long ago. How Shelob came there, flying from ruin, no tale tells, for out of the dark years few tales have come. But still, she was there, who was there before Sauron, and before the first stone of Barad-dûr, and she served none but herself, drinking the blood of elves and men, bloated and grown fat with endless brooding on her feasts, weaving webs of shadow. For all living things were her food, and her vomit, darkness. Far and ew, yeah, fucking evil. So have we discussed that Shelob only exists because Tolkien had an encounter with a very scary spider in his childhood?
Yes.
Which means that if he'd had an encounter with a scary weasel or something.
What, we'd get Brian Jakes?
I'm picturing Mirkwood crawling with rodents that are the size of like Labradors, like
that is a legitimately terrifying thought. Like, let's be real.
It's ROUSs.
It all comes full circle.
It does. Far and wide, her lesser broods, bastards of the miserable mates, her own offspring that she slew, spread from glen to glen, from the Efelduath to the eastern hills, to Dol Guldur and the fastnesses of Mirkwood. But none could rival her, Shelob the Great, last child of Ungoliant to trouble the unhappy world. Already, years before, Gollum had beheld her, Smeagol who pried into all dark holes, and in past days he had bowed and worshipped her, and the darkness of her evil will walked through all the ways of his weariness beside him, cutting him off from light and from regret. And he had promised to bring her food, but her lust was not his lust. Little she knew of or cared for towers or rings or anything devised by mind or hand, who only desired death for all others, mind and body, and for herself a glut of life alone, swollen till the mountains could no longer hold her up and the darkness could not contain her. But that desire was yet far away, and long now had she been hungry, lurking in her den while the power of Sauron grew, and light and living things forsook his borders. And the city in the valley was dead, and no elf or man came near, only the unhappy orcs, poor food and wary. But she must eat, and however busily they delved new winding passages from the pass and from their tower, ever she found some way to snare them, but she lusted for sweeter meat, and Gollum had brought it to her. We'll see, he said often to himself when the evil mood was on him as he walked the dangerous road from Emenwil to Morgul Vale. We'll see. It may well be, oh yes, it may well be that when she throws away the bones and the empty garments, we shall find it. We shall get it, the precious, a reward for poor Smeagol who brings nice food. And we'll save the precious as we promised. Oh, yes. And when we've got it safe, then she'll know it. Oh, yes. And we'll pay her back, my precious. Then we'll pay everyone back. So he thought, in an inner chamber of his cunning, which he still hoped to hide from her, even when he had come to her again and had bowed low before her while his companions slept.
He was, in fact, sneaking.
He was.
Like,
Sam,
as much as...
Sorry.
Right, I'm like, as much as we talked about Sam being kind of like, you know, a little bit shitty to him in that moment, or Sam at least feeling like he was, it was in fact the case that he was trying to murder them.
100% accurate.
moment. Yes. Oh, here. Bring that camera.
It's really fucked up, though, to think that that poor little schizophrenic shithead has Sauron and Shelob living in his head and whispering things to him all the time. Like,
Yes, it is.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anyone battling multiple addictions, Tolkien's got words that you can relate to.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about also the time that he was living in and like the epidemic of addiction after World War One.
Yeah.
He probably, not personally, but from friends and stuff, knew what he was talking about.
Right? It's why Gollum never comes off as entirely evil, even when people describe him as entirely evil. Even when he's eating babies, you're like, Jesus, this is a troubled person.
Yes. Yes. I mean, granted, eating babies is probably, it's pretty far down the evil scale.
Yeah.
But yes.
About as far down as you can get, really. But driven there, that's the thing. Driven there by all of this stuff.
Although you have to think, like, he found Shelob, and instead of running away, he worshipped her. Yeah. So that seed of whatever was already there for him to be like, oh, look, the most evil thing living on this planet other than Sauron. I should worship that.
I should worship that. It's powerful. That's all he recognizes. He likes power.
Well, the powerless
and secrets. Yeah. Such a character study. And as for Sauron, he knew where she lurked. It pleased him that she should dwell there hungry but unabated in malice, a more sure watch upon that ancient path into his land than any other that his skill could have devised. And orcs, they were useful slaves, but he had them in plenty. If now and again Shelob caught them to stay her appetite, she was welcome. He could spare them. And sometimes, as a man may cast a dainty to his cat he calls her, but she owns him not, Sauron would send her prisoners that he had no better uses for. He would have them driven to her hole and report brought back to him of the play she made. So they both lived, delighting in their own devices, and feared no assault, nor wrath, nor any end of their wickedness. Never yet had any fly escaped from Shelob's webs, and the greater now was her rage and hunger. But nothing of this evil which they had stirred up against them did poor Sam know, except that a fear was growing on him, a menace which he could not see, and such a weight did it become that it was a burden to him to run, and his feet seemed leaden. Dread was round him, and enemies before him in the pass, and his master was in a fey mood, running heedlessly to meet them. Turning his eyes away from the shadow behind and the deep gloom beneath the cliff upon his left, he looked ahead, and he saw two things that increased his dismay. He saw that the sword which Frodo still held unsheathed was glittering with blue flame, and he saw that though the sky behind was now dark, still the window in the tower was glowing red. "Orcs," he muttered. "We'll never rush it like this. There's orcs about, and worse than orcs." Then, returning quickly to his long habit of secrecy, he closed his hand about the precious phial, which he still bore. Red with his own living blood his hand shone for a moment, and then he thrust the revealing light deep into a pocket near his breast, and drew his elven cloak about him. Now he tried to quicken his pace. His master was gaining on him. Already he was some 20 strides ahead, flitting on like a shadow. Soon he would be lost to sight in that grey world. Hardly had Sam hidden the light of the star-glass when she came. A little way ahead and to his left he saw suddenly, issuing from a black hole of shadow under the cliff, the most loathly shape that he had ever beheld, horrible beyond the horror of an evil dream. Most like a spider she was, but huger than the great hunting beasts, and more terrible than they because of the evil purpose in her remorseless eyes. Those same eyes that he had thought daunted and defeated, there they were lit with a fell light again, clustering in her outthrust head. Great horns she had, and behind her short stalk-like neck was her huge, swollen body, a vast bloated bag swaying and sagging between her legs. Its great bulk was black, blotched with livid marks, but the belly underneath was pale and luminous and gave forth a stench. Her legs were bent, with great knobbed joints high above her back, and hairs that stuck out like steel spines, and at each leg's end there was a claw. Ew.
Yikes.
I thought they did a good job with Shelob in the movies.
I've been thinking as we've been reading this passage about how they designed her lair so that it was like smooth at the bottom where she dragged herself through and like pitted with acid up above. I thought that was so cool.
That was awesome and nice and horrific.
Mm-hmm.
Since they couldn't make it pitch black.
Yeah.
I thought that what they did was...
What they did was probably actually like just visually better than pitch black anyway, just for the mood.
Yeah.
Like something like this looks weird and wrong, but you can't quite figure out how. And then, yeah.
Yeah. And then you see her and it's like, oh, that's why.
Oh, yeah.
And the way she moves is awesome too. I have a vague recollection, really old memory of seeing the cartoons, and I feel like they put like a human woman's torso on spider legs for the cartoons.
Oh yeah, that's not the same at all.
No. I mean, it was petrifying, but it wasn't the same kind of petrifying. It was because it was a monster, not because it was a fucking spider.
Yeah. Yeah, and just because they call her she doesn't mean she's a woman.
Right? And I think that's where... So I'm going to check. I'm going to check because I want to know. Animated Lord of the Rings Shelob. Animated Lord of the Rings Shelob. Yes, I did mean animated, not just animated.
Animated is what happens if you have been animated for too long. Completely animated, man.
Totally animated. Nope, apparently not. It's just a fucking spider. I wonder where that image came from then.
Toy Story?
No, it was older than that in my memory. Might have been Gremlins 2.
Seems like a possibility.
I'll have to do an image search for scary spider characters of the 80s in order to figure this out.
That sounds like a terrible image search. Please enjoy and count me out.
I ever tell you about searching for the bugs that we had at the south end of town online?
Even no, maybe. No, I don't think so.
We got this influx of, so it's like high desert at the south end of Colorado Springs for anyone who may watch someday. And there were a lot of weird bugs there that aren't in any other parts of town. And these ones showed up one year and never went away, but they were like yay big, inch long, maybe in general. They looked like ants with a gray abdomen and a yellow head and really big pinchers, like scary big pinchers. They were fucking terrifying. And they were so large and moved so scuttily and were so terrifying that it took me a while to get an image search done because by the time I was done making sure it wasn't alive anymore, I didn't have anything to compare an image search to. Because I would hit it just once, I would be like, ah!
Indeed, as what does.
So eventually one was crawling across the office and I just stuck a bowl over it. And when Jason got home from work, I was like, honey, you're going to have to be the one to kill this without destroying it. And I'll do the image search, but don't obliterate it. Just kill it.
Just kill it a little bit.
A little bit. And they're called wind scorpions or camel spiders. No, sun spiders. Not camel spiders, sun spiders.
Yeah, camel spiders are the ones that they get in like Afghanistan.
Right. Yeah. But sun spiders they can pinch you real bad. They're not terribly toxic, but they're fucking terrifying, and I hated them. A bit like earwigs, really, right? Like, or you don't kill them. I'm like, no, kill it with fire.
Yeah, it's not that it's dealing me psychic damage is what's happening.
Exactly. Oh. June bugs were another one where it was like, no, they won't hurt you, and I'm like, there's 20,000 of them trying to get into my ears. Yes, they're hurting me. Fucking June bugs. As soon as she had squeezed her soft, squelching body and its folded limbs out of the upper exit from her lair, I'm reading without warning you.
No, it's okay. It's just the word squelching in this context or any context is just really upsetting. It's one of those words.
I find squelching more more unappealing than moist. I don't
by far, yes.
Yeah. I think the world can be separated into people who find the word moist unappealing and people who are Terry Pratchett fans.
Possibly. I've never understood the whole deal with that. Like, why the word moist is the one that everyone is like, oh my God, I hate that word. Like, really? Really?
Fine, I'll use squelching instead. See if we can start a trend.
No, that one does legitimately make me upset.
I won't say it anymore then.
Thank you.
Out of the upper exit from her lair, she moved with a horrible speed, now running on her creaking legs, now making a sudden bound. She was between Sam and his master. Either she did not see Sam, or she avoided him for the moment as the bearer of the light and fixed all her intent upon one prey, upon Frodo, bereft of his file, running heedless up the path, unaware yet of his peril. Swiftly he ran, but Shelob was swifter. In a few leaps she would have him. Sam gasped and gathered all his remaining breath to shout. "Look out behind!" he yelled. "Look out, master! But suddenly his cry was stifled. A long, clammy hand went over his mouth, and another caught him by the neck, while something wrapped itself about his leg. Taken off his guard, he toppled backward into the arms of his attacker. "Got him!" hissed Gollum in his ear. "At last, my precious, we've got him. Yes, the nasty hobbit. We takes this one. She'll get the other. Oh, yes, Shelob will get him, not Smeagol. He promised. He won't hurt master at all. But he's got you, you nasty, filthy little sneak." He spat on Sam's neck. Fury at the treachery and desperation at the delay when his master was in deadly peril gave to Sam a sudden violence and strength that was far beyond anything that Gollum had expected from this slow, stupid hobbit, as he thought him. Not Gollum himself could have twisted more quickly or more fiercely. His hold on Sam's mouth slipped, and Sam ducked and lunged forward again, trying to tear away from the grip on his neck. His sword was still in his hand, and on his left arm, hanging by its thong, was Faramir's staff. Desperately he tried to turn and stab his enemy, but Gollum was too quick. His long right arm shot out, and he grabbed Sam's wrist. His fingers were like a vice. Slowly and relentlessly he bent the hand down and forward, till with a cry of pain Sam released the sword and it fell to the ground. And all the while Gollum's other hand was tightening on Sam's throat. Then Sam played his last trick. With all his strength he pulled away and got his feet firmly planted. Then suddenly he drove his legs against the ground and with his whole force hurled himself backwards. Not expecting even this simple trick from Sam, Gollum fell over with Sam on top, and he received the weight of the sturdy hobbit in his stomach. A sharp hiss came out of him, and for a second his hand upon Sam's throat loosened, but his fingers still gripped the sword hand. Sam tore himself forward and away and stood up, and then quickly he wheeled away to his right, pivoting on the wrist held by Gollum. Laying hold of the staff with his left hand, Sam swung it up, and down it came with a whistling crack on Gollum's outstretched arm just below the elbow. With a squeal, Gollum let go. Then Sam waded in. Not waiting to change the staff from left to right, he dealt another savage blow. Quick as a snake, Gollum slithered aside, and the stroke aimed at his head fell across his back. The staff cracked and broke. That was enough for him. Grabbing from behind was an old game of his, and seldom had he failed in it. But this time, misled by spite, he had made the mistake of speaking and gloating before he had both hands on his victim's neck. Everything had gone wrong with his beautiful plan since that horrible light had so unexpectedly appeared in the darkness. And now he was face to face with a furious enemy, little less than his own size. This fight was not for him. Sam swept up his sword from the ground and raised it. Gollum squealed, and springing aside onto all fours, he jumped away in one big bound like a frog. Before Sam could reach him, he was off, running with amazing speed back towards the tunnel. Sword in hand, Sam went after him. For the moment he had forgotten everything else but the red fury in his brain and the desire to kill Gollum. But before he could overtake him, Gollum was gone. Then, as the dark hole stood before him, and the stench came out to meet him, like a clap of thunder the thought of Frodo and the monster smote upon Sam's mind. He spun round and rushed wildly up the path, calling and calling his master's name. He was too late. So far, Gollum's plot had succeeded. Chapter 10 is the last chapter in the Two Towers.
We made it.
We're about to. Chapter 10, The Choices of Master Samwise. Frodo was lying face upward on the ground, and the monster was bending over him, so intent upon her victim that she took no heed of Sam and his cries, until he was close at hand. As he rushed up, he saw that... Okay. It's the echo got real bad. Are you hearing it? All right.
Yeah, I could hear it there for a sec.
Yeah. As he rushed up, he saw... Damn it. Yo? Yo. Yo. Okay. As he rushed... That is fucking hilarious. What's going on? Whoa. Whoa. As he rushed up, he saw that Frodo was already bound in cords, wound about him from ankle to shoulder, and the monster with her great forelegs was beginning half to lift, half to drag his body away. On the near side of him lay, gleaming on the ground, his elven blade, where it had fallen, useless from his grasp. Sam did not wait to wonder what was to be done, or whether he was brave, or loyal, or filled with rage. He sprang forward with a yell, and seized his master's sword in his left hand. Then he charged. No onslaught more fierce was ever seen in the savage world of beasts, where some desperate small creature armed with little teeth alone will spring upon a tower of horn and hide that stands above its fallen mate.
Gay?
Beautifully so.
Oh, yes.
Disturbed as if out of some gloating dream by his small yell, she turned slowly the dreadful malice of her glance upon him. But almost before she was aware that a fury was upon her greater than any she had known in countless years, the shining sword bit upon her foot and shore away the claw. Sam. Woo!
Go Sam. Go Sam.
Sam sprang in, and then I lost my place. Inside the arches of her legs, and with a quick upthrust of his other hand, stabbed at the clustered eyes upon her lowered head. One great eye went dark. Now the miserable creature was right under her, for the moment out of reach of her sting and of her claws. Her vast belly was above him with its putrid light, and the stench of it almost smote him down. Still his fury held for one more blow, and before she could sink upon him, smothering him and all his little impudence of courage, he slashed the bright elven blade across her with desperate strength.
That echo is crazy, huh?
Yeah. And it's really frustrating because it's so intermittent.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it coming back?
Yeah.
Okay. How about now? How about now? How about now?
I wish I knew what to tell you. I was like, I don't know.
Hang on, I'm going to turn off the mic. Can we work now? Yeah. Let's get through the fight at least. He slashed the bright elven blade across her with desperate strength. But Shelob was not as dragons are. No softer spot had she, save only her eyes. Knobbed and pitted with corruption was her age-old hide, but ever thickened from within with layer on layer of evil growth. The blade scored it with a dreadful gash, but those hideous folds could not be pierced by any strength of men, not though elf or dwarf should forge the steel, or the hand of Baron or of Turin wield it. She yielded to the stroke, and then heaved up the great bag of her belly high above Sam's head. Poison frothed and bubbled from the wound. Now, splaying her legs, she drove her huge bulk down on him again. Too soon. For Sam still stood upon his feet, and dropping his own sword, with both hands he held the elven blade point upward, fending off that ghastly roof. And so Shelob, with the driving force of her own cruel will, with strength greater than any warrior's hand, thrust herself upon a bitter spike. Deep, deep it pricked as Sam was crushed slowly to the ground. No such anguish had Shelob ever known or dreamed of knowing in all her long world of wickedness. Not the doughtiest soldier of old Gondor, nor the most savage orc entrapped had ever thus endured her, or set blade to her beloved flesh. A shudder went through her. Heaving up again, wrenching away from the pain, she bent her writhing limbs beneath her and sprang backwards in a convulsive leap. Sam had fallen to his knees by Frodo's head, his senses reeling in the foul stench, his two hands still gripping the hilt of the sword. Through the mist before his eyes he was aware dimly of Frodo's face, and stubbornly he fought to master himself, and to drag himself out of the swoon that was upon him. Slowly he raised his head, and saw her, only a few paces away, eyeing him, her beak drabbling a spittle of venom, and a green ooze trickling from below her wounded eye. There she crouched, her shuddering belly splayed upon the ground, the great bows of her legs quivering as she gathered herself for another spring, this time to crush and sting to death, no little bite of poison to still the struggling of her meat, this time to slay and then to rend. Even as Sam himself crouched looking at her, seeing his death in her eyes, a thought came to him, as if some remote voice had spoken, and he fumbled in his breast with his left hand and found what he sought. Cold and hard and solid it seemed to his touch in a phantom world of horror, the phial of the file of Galadriel. Galadriel, he said faintly, and then he heard voices far off but clear, the crying of the elves as they walked under the stars and the beloved shadows of the Shire, and the music of the elves as it came through his sleep in the hall of fire in the house of Elrond. Gilthoniel a Elbereth! And then his tongue was loosed and his voice cried in a language which he did not know. A Elbereth Gilthoniel! O Menelpan on Palindiriel! On Lenalan Sidin Nurithos! Atiron Ninfanuilos! And with that he staggered to his feet and was Samwise the Hobbit, Hamfast's son, again. Now come, you filth, he cried. You've hurt my master, you brute, and you'll pay for it. Oh my God. Apparently Sam is echoing.
Well, I mean, that's one explanation.
We're going on, but we'll settle with you first. Come on and taste it again. As if his indomitable spirit had set its potency in motion, the glass blazed suddenly like a white torch in his hand. It flamed like a star that, leaping from the firmament, sears the dark air with intolerable light. No such terror out of heaven had ever burned in Shelob's face before. The beams of it entered into her wounded head and scored it with unbearable pain, and the dreadful infection of light spread from eye to eye. She fell back, beating the air with her forelegs, her sight blasted by inner lightnings, her mind in agony. Then, turning her maimed head away, she rolled aside and began to crawl, claw by claw, towards the opening in the dark cliff behind. Sam came on. He was reeling like a drunken man, but he came on. And Shelob, cowed at last, shrunken in defeat, jerked and quivered as she tried to hasten from him. She reached the hole and squeezing down, leaving a trail of green-yellow slime, she slipped in, even as Sam hewed a last stroke at her dragging legs. Then he fell to the ground. Shelob was gone, and whether she lay long in her lair, nursing her malice and her misery, and in slow years of darkness healed herself from within, rebuilding her clustered eyes, until with hunger like death she spun once more her dreadful snares in the glens of the mountains of shadow, this tale does not tell.
Perfect timing.
Oh, goodness. Excellent, good fight scene.
Indeed, indeed.
Woo. Okay. And then we could be the same face. Nope. Ah!
I don't know what you expected.
I didn't think it would work.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go probably sleep.
Sleep is good.
I will see you next Monday.
Teenagers to read to. Never-ending story. We've gotten past the bit where Bastion goes stark raving mad, and we've just reached the point where he started a war.
Sounds about right.
Right.
All right.
I love you.
Love you too.
Cuidado.
Yamas.